What's up? Welcome to Carlie's Couch.
Happy Monday.
As always.
How y'all feeling? What you thinking about? What you excited about this week?
Today we're going to talk about meditation. Something that we probably mentioned before in other episodes as a means for feeling better or kind of refocusing. So when you're dealing with other things. So in other episodes, I'm sure that's kind of why we mentioned it. But today we're going to talk more about how we got into it, what it is, and how we practice it.
And so in true Carlie fashion, we're going to try this breathing thing again. Last time we tried, the thing tried to kill us in the background.
Yeah, that was like the third episode or something. Or fourth
This
episode.
whole thing tried to kill us. But we're going to do some breathing today before we get started. So if you're driving, don't close your eyes. But if you're sitting somewhere and can, I invite you to close your eyes or soften your gaze. Just make sure you're not like staring super intently at something. And then take a big inhale through your nose.
Oh, is this the beginning?
Yep. And then exhale out of your mouth. 2 more big clearing breaths like that. Inhale through your nose. Try to fill up your belly. And then slowly exhale all of the air out of your belly. 1 more here. Make this the biggest inhale you've done all day. Big inhale. Hold your breath at the top just for a moment. Sip in just a little bit more air. And then as slowly as you can, exhale all the air out of your body. And then just take a moment to notice how you feel and to check in with yourself. And then whenever you're ready, gently blink open your eyes. Yeah. So I'm super excited.
Okay.
That's as simple as it is. I'm excited to talk about meditation because it's been a huge part of my life. And it was initially something I was not a fan of. So it's pretty interesting, but also because of just how much of an impact it's made in people's lives that I know. So I'm super excited. And also just to dispel any myths about it. Because when I first heard about meditation, I thought it was like a monk, like just sitting there, like floating somewhere in a monastery on the other side of the world.
So what is meditation?
For me, meditation is anytime you take a moment to get centered in yourself. Anytime you slow down and you're completely present within yourself. What about for you?
So you can be present within yourself, but be walking around and doing everything?
Mm-hmm.
So is that the same as awareness?
Yeah, I think it can be. I think being aware and being centered are a little bit different, though. Like you can be aware and be centered, but you can also be aware and not be centered. So you can be self-aware of like how I'm feeling, but not really be present. But for me, meditation is any time when you're super present with yourself. You can be meditating, like doing yoga, eating. There's mindful walking, dynamic mindfulness. It's a lot of different forms that it takes.
Okay. The only thing, so I would add to what you said, just having to think about what I would say meditation is, would be that it's the intentional like time behind doing those things. So not just like your stay all the time. Like you may feel aware, you may be breathing. I think that's good and that's probably should be regular. But to really like take a moment out of your time maybe is to me makes it like I would define that as meditation.
Yeah. No, that's real. And also discipline, learning how to, clear out your thoughts and learning how to control the incessant chatter that we have in our heads.
That's meditation?
Mm-hmm.
Or you do that during meditation?
Oh, you do that during meditation.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I agree with that. So when did you first learn about it then?
I first learned about it, they always talk about when you're little, like, oh, if you're stressed out or if you feel yourself getting really angry before you do something, take 10 breaths. And although
that's what you grew up learning?
I just saw it on, like, teachers would talk about it or we would see it in different things. But when I first really learned about meditation and started trying to practice, it was when I was doing yoga. And they would mention how you should meditate and, like, sit still and just be still with yourself and your thoughts. And I always thought it was dumb.
When was that you were getting into yoga, though?
I started getting into yoga when I was about 8 years ago. When I was, like, 22. And I could never just sit still without like everything attacking me at once, like in my head. Like I had worried about the stuff that I had to do today, worrying about all these things, thinking about the future and planning and hustling and everything else in my life. But after yoga and shavasana, that was the only time that my mind was clear. And so although I started doing yoga for many different reasons, what I really ended up loving about it was at the end, like I just could relax and clear my mind.
So what is it about yoga that attracted you to do that versus meditation? You were thinking like, oh, that's stupid.
I thought yoga was stupid too at first, but yoga was a competitive thing. So there's, you can do handstands and there's all these poses. And for me as an athlete, I'm like, oh, that's like testing my body. It's, you know, pushing myself to see how far I can go. And I think it helps me lead into meditation because after you take a really hard class, and you're sweating and you've given everything that you can, it's like at the end of the workout, you're kind of just exhausted. And so that was the only time I could get that peace of mind. And so my practice has kind of grown from that, but that's where it started.
And so what did you do after you started doing yoga? What made you specifically go into meditation though?
Because of how I felt after Shavasana. So Shavasana is the last pose for people who don't do yoga. When you lay there, it's dead man's pose, corpse pose. You just lay there, palms up, shoulder blades down your back, your feet just fall open, and you just relax. And it's like the most important part of a yoga class, but a lot of times the hardest part because you're still and you're not moving. And I realized how I felt then, and I was able to clear my mind and kind of control it. And I was like, this will be a great practice to have in my life to learn how to control that and also to bring that sense of peace into my everyday. And maybe I don't have time for an hour or a 90-minute yoga class in the morning. If I could learn how to do this, that could help me have that peace all day.
So then how did you?
How did I
learn how to do it? Or you just were doing that?
I was doing that for a while. Like I was meditating at the end of yoga, and then I started trying to do it with apps. So we talk about apps, and I'm sure we'll get into it, but I started trying to meditate with apps, and I realized that I liked guided meditations at first. There are many different kinds of meditation, but guided is when someone leads you through it. So in person or on an app, and they kind of talk you through it. And that's really how I got into it, as I realized it's just going through different thought processes. So one of the ways you can go into guided meditation is just to check in with your body. So you just do a body scan from the top all the way to the bottom. And that I was like, oh, so this is easy. So I can do this by myself. And so I started trying to do that by myself. And then it got to where now every morning, like I get up and I meditate for 5 to 10 minutes. On good days, 10. On days that I'm struggling, 5. But I make sure to sit still at least that amount of time every day.
So for those of you who are listening, screenshot it and let us know when you heard about meditation, or like when you kind of started, or how long you've been doing it. I'm always curious about that because I feel like meditation is one of those things that has become a little bit more buzzworthy in the last few years, especially to certain demographics. It's not something we really grow up like hearing about so much, or, you know, maybe it depends on where you're from and your background, of course. For me, I never heard about meditation really, or, you know, in some cartoons, they do the things where like they'll cross their legs and do it. Yeah. So I think in the back of my mind, meditation was always the style where you cross your legs and you chant. Do you remember the name of that?
No.
There's a specific name for that kind. But that's the one that I had always thought about. And I don't think I ever tried to think about what does that mean? What are they doing? It's just, oh, that's just clearing your mind. And I never really thought about it as a practice or a thing to do.
So how'd you get into it?
Maybe, I'm trying to think, because even like when I lived in DC, I don't recall like really getting into it then. I think really I'd have to look and see on my app when I started using the Calm app, because I think that's when I started doing it more regularly using the app. Maybe reading a lot of my like businessy books or success books. I feel like they always talk about clearing your thoughts and processing your thoughts, and meditation was always mentioned as a thing to try to do. But with the Calm app, I like the guided meditations as well. And so for me, when they have it where you're setting a streak, or like it marks every day that you do it, or it gives you extra stats, things like that, has variety. So I like using the app, and I don't much like just sit down and like meditate by myself, like just try to be quiet and breathe, only if it's like really, really quick. But I do the 10-minute daily ones and 15-minute ones, and then they have some sleep ones as well that I like. But I think I really got into it regularly maybe like the last 3 years, maybe 3.5, 4 years.
I was about to say, yeah, I've only started regularly doing it probably since my yoga teacher training. So it's like 2 years, like a year and a half, 2 years. The funny part is during yoga teacher training, it was actually my least favorite thing. Like, I just wanted to teach the class and do the moves. And now my favorite part as a teacher is the breathing and the meditation. Like, I feel like that's where you get the most work done. And it's something you have to experience and find what works for you to really understand. Because it's like hard to explain, like, oh, it makes me feel like this, because it's different for different people. But it's been great along this journey.
In 9th or 10th grade, we read Siddhartha, and I remember a lot of that. He was a Brahmin monk in that story, Indian. And I remember a lot of talking about meditation, or like finding that place of like nirvana, and just how can I get everything to be perfect? Like, when am I at this state of just everything's glowing and everything feels good? And that was kind of like the point of him trying to search the world and find that. Like, how do you get that? Through money, through sex, through meditation, fasting, whatever. He tried all these things. And I feel like I remember that as maybe one of the first things, big focuses on meditation. But it is mostly like it comes from like Eastern tradition, right? So do you know the background of it like that?
I actually,
She's like,
let me not lie. But I know that the point of yoga is not for the physical poses. Like, that's just for the mind. It's to learn how to control your mind. So you're getting put into these like postures essentially, and you have to learn how to quiet your mind and be present on your mat. Like, it teaches you how to meditate in real life, because you can't control what's happening on the outside of you, but you can only control what's happening on the inside of you. Okay,
so you keep mentioning yoga. So I was gonna say, so is is yoga a form of meditation? Ooh, that could be a brand, Moga.
It could.
Don't take that, y'all. I might trademark that, to be honest with you. I might turn into a Mogi instead of a yogi. Coming soon. But I was gonna say, so is yoga meditation? But the way you just explained it is kind of cool, because it's almost like that's a practice on top of meditation that allows you to practice meditating, doing things. Like, because in real life, that's the thing. I think a lot of people are like, meditate for what? Like, why am I gonna sit still and focus my mind or be aware or whatever? Because like I have things to do, or I'm moving around or whatever. So I think it's helpful though in itself, meditation, and just being still. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong for what I know about meditation, but a lot of people consider meditation like trying to clear your mind. And for me, for the most part, what I've learned and from what I've read, it's more just about being aware and like present of what's going on, like with your body and with your mind. So it's not necessarily that the goal and that, oh, I'm doing it right if I forgot I'm here type thing. And I think that's kind of what distracts us at first. We're like, like as soon as you close your eyes, or for me, as soon as I close my eyes, it's like you said earlier, you think about everything all of a sudden, and you're like, damn, I'm doing this wrong, because am I supposed to be like clearing and having no thoughts? Like, it's supposed to just be like stillness, and it's not. And so it's really discouraging, I think. When I first started, I'm like, dang, this is really hard for me.
Yeah, no, it was the same. And it wasn't actually until my yoga teacher training, shout out to Alina, one of my teachers, she said that the first step in meditation is learning that you can control your thoughts, in the sense that you can't stop them from coming, because we're human, but you don't have to attach to them. So it's learning that part. But then the second part is actually sitting with your shit. That's real meditation, is sitting with those thoughts, being aware of what they are and where they're coming from, and just really connecting with yourself.
And so why is that important in meditating, and what you feel like you get out of it?
I think that's different for everybody, but for me, if I never stop to check in with myself, to understand where my incessant thoughts are coming from, I can never really look at the root of it and never address it. So I'm trying to be, the best version of myself and fulfill God's purpose for my life, and also be a good friend. Like, I have all these things that I want to do with my life, but if I'm not checking in with myself, how do I know if I'm doing that? Or how do I know that I really want this thing? Or why do I feel this type of way or have a certain reaction when this happens to me, like triggers?
Is meditation the only time you can figure that stuff out though?
No, but if you never get still, like, I think there is an issue. One, like, what is the big deal with not getting still? Like, why does that stress you out so much? And I think,
or maybe it's just not, like, even if you're not avoiding it, let's say you just never heard of or don't know it, like, still, what's the benefit of being still? Like, what's the benefit of taking that time to really breathe and sit down?
To help you de-escalate stress.
Well, if you don't feel like you're stressed, like, if you're already like a cool, chill person, do you feel like they could meditate or they could benefit from meditation, that anybody can?
I think anybody can benefit from meditation, but that's why I want to emphasize that it doesn't look one certain way. Like you're sitting there chanting Om, that's amazing, and that works for some people. It doesn't work for everybody. And so there are moving meditations for those type of chill people, or walking meditations, or mindful eating. Like there are a million different ways to check in with yourself. I meditate when I do yoga, like the whole time, literally. Like before practice, I'll set an intention for myself. Like, oh, I want to be kinder to myself, or I want to push myself today, or I want to go easy. Like I want to tune inwards and listen to my body. And then throughout the whole practice, there's all these thoughts that are coming, or dang, this pose hurts, or this is stupid, or this teacher didn't do this. But it's like learning how to sit with it.
It's a challenging time where you're very intentional about, I'm going to pay attention to every thought. Does that make sense maybe? Because even if you're doing it during yoga, or if I'm just sitting down and meditating with a guided, or even if I'm just breathing, it sounds like you're saying, and this is what I kind of actually feel like I'm doing, is that I'm still having all these thoughts, but now I'm like sitting, watching these thoughts come in and letting them just kind of go, and just not really, like you said, not attaching to them. But I'm trying to think, and I wasn't trying to like comment like I'm challenging you, but I'm trying to think about why meditation really is important to me. And for me, I'm somebody who can get anxious because there's so many things on my plate to do. And I always have a lot of thoughts. Sometimes I tend to think about the future instead of being on the present moment. And we have mentioned being in the present. And to me, maybe that's more of why it's helpful for me, because I'm trying to just think about right now, what's going on right now, how do I feel right now, the breeze right now, nothing needs to be done right now, so for me, I notice that I'm often thinking about something before that's coming up, whatever, but not just like paying attention to my surroundings. So I think for me, that's good, because you can't be anxious thinking about what's going on right in this second. So that's what it would be for me. So that's why I wonder, like, if you don't really have anxiety or whatever, I guess probably in this life, most people do have some kind of reason to just chill out sometimes, and just sit down sometimes, and like just reflect and be quiet. And maybe if you've never done it and you're like, oh, because that's dumb, or I haven't thought about it, if you sit down and try to do it, I think you'd probably be surprised at how hard it is to, like, even like literally for like 3 minutes, like if you just try to sit down and just be like relaxed and like not engage, or you'll notice like where your mind goes all these different places. And it's really interesting when you're taking a seat and really paying attention to what your mind does when you're not really trying to focus on anything.
Exactly. And that's what I was going to say. You asked about like the way that the thoughts, like, am I focusing on a certain thought or something? It's like they come like waves, like on a beach, like they come and then they go away, and you don't attach to them, but you do take that extra step of awareness and notice what the thoughts are. Like just notice, like, oh man, I keep thinking about work, or I keep thinking about this. And for someone who may not feel stressed, or may not feel anxious, or feel like they need to do it for any type of stress, like de-escalation, like maybe you are doing it because you're ready to make a change in your life and you don't know what, or maybe you feel unfulfilled, or maybe you're ready to take this next big step, but you're just not sure. It's a way to check in with yourself to see where you are. So just being still for a moment, because we're moving constantly. And for achievers, like, I like to keep moving on toward this next thing, and hustling, like our mentality, like if you're not working, you're, losing basically, like hustling all the time. But how do you feel? Like, are you even hustling in the right direction? And how do you know?
I'm sorry. I like what you just said too about staying still, because one thing that I'd also read kind of recently, maybe in the last couple months, that resonated with me, like, oh yeah, that is true for me, is sometimes you do need to just be still, because sometimes when you're trying really hard to figure out something or think about the ideas, you're like forcing it. But if you just like let yourself chill and relax, sometimes that's the perfect space for like, oh, a good idea to come, or a thought to come that you needed. And I don't really know why necessarily, but I think sometimes that goes back to the universe thing, like, let it line up, like you're trying to force, control. And when you just like relax, sometimes it just, something slips in there, because your mind is like looking for these answers, but you got to like remove some of the noise, I think. And sometimes we create our own noise. Always. And so it's good to be aware of that, and then really let your mind like focus.
No, I love that. And my theory, I can't say that it's correct or not, but my theory is that you already know all the answers. Like when you're looking
like
at
it's
these
in
big
there.
decisions, but if you never pause to check in with yourself, you don't know. And like you said, that noise, like you get distracted from what society expects, what your partner expects, what your parents,
environmental stuff that crowds it up.
And if you never stop to think like, man, what does Carlie want to do? Like I might be doing what I think Lex wants me to do, or what I think my partner or whoever wants me to do, but it's really figuring out what sets right with you. It's like if you make a decision. Okay, so if you like, let's say you're like, hey, am I gonna move away or am I gonna stay here? And you have a coin and you flip the coin and you're like, okay, tails is I'm gonna move away, and you get tails. You're like, dang, I didn't want to move away. Then that's the answer, and you knew that. But it's stepping inside and giving yourself time to check in and see, because you really know what you need, what you want. If you're feeling unfulfilled, like you know it's inside. You don't be like, that's well, I meditated for 3 minutes and I didn't know. It's a journey.
Like it's a time to remove societal barriers and barriers that you create because of those outside forces, instead of like the lenses that come with all these different things. It's just like pure Carlie thought, pure Lex thought.
Yeah, and
that's
it's
cool.
Pure, and it's, I feel like, helped me get to know myself more and love myself more. It's been huge on my self-love journey.
But do you feel like you'd ever gotten teased, or like it was something where somebody would be like, ew, why are you doing that? Or like stigma to you?
Not to me, but well, I take that back. I get teased about it a lot, because they're like, oh, you're like a floaty yoga teacher. Like meditation's going to fix everything. I never said that, but I feel like it'll help give you a better perspective, which is always a good thing. But I realized that out here, or I say out here in Los Angeles, but I think anywhere, people don't take it seriously necessarily. So I say that to say, when I say I'm a yoga teacher and that I teach meditation, people are like, oh, that's cute. But when I'm like, oh, I used to be an engineer, like, oh, wow, like that actually means something. And it's just really interesting, because I feel like meditation helped me a lot more with myself and my perspective than engineering ever did.
And there's a lot more, I've noticed, curriculums or like school programs that are starting to include concepts around meditation, concepts around like self-awareness, and just more emotional intelligence as well. And so all of that is connected, and I think they're starting to recognize benefits when they kind of introduce programs to these kids, or to sometimes troublemakers or whatever, as a way to give them space to process and think and, you know, like arrange your thoughts and stuff. So that's why at the beginning I kind of said, like, I feel like in the last few years it's gotten bigger maybe, or maybe more popular, because it's always been around. But again, I think that even to like people in our communities and stuff, it's more like, oh yeah, I've tried that, or I'll go to that, and it's not as shunned as much.
Exactly. And I feel like when we were growing up, it was kind of a thing. But even now, so when I say there's still a stigma around it, I'm from Oklahoma, in case you guys missed that on the episode. And I was on Facebook like a week or two ago, and one of my teachers from first grade had posted on her status. She was like, oh my God, I cannot believe this school is making kids do this Buddhist meditation. Parents should have the option. How dare they bring other gods things into schools? Like, so there's still a huge stigma around meditation. Like even the word, like even the religious words, like meditation and yoga, like that makes people hella uncomfortable. And so instead of going like ham, like, well, I just replied and I said, hey, you know, I am, like, I teach dynamic mindfulness in schools. Like, if you ever have any questions, please let me know. And she was just like, well, I just don't think that it's fair. Like, why are they bringing other religious things? And I was like, it doesn't have to be religious. Like, although the roots are on the like eastern side of the world, like it doesn't have to be religious.
So is her religion, if she paid attention to that. But so it sounds like a lot of ignorance around it, and the same as with, like I said, where I learned about it. Like, you're just ignorant about it because we're not really learning it as part of an academic style, or we didn't when I was in school. But I'm glad you brought that back up, because earlier it had crossed my mind as well to think about, you know, if you are a Christian, where there are examples of meditation in the Bible, and there's so many times where, you know, the fasting and praying for 40 days or for certain lengths of time. There's lots of times when the prophets like took special time to go away and like spend time by themselves or with the bush or over here. And then in the same in Islam, and obviously like within Buddhism and in Hinduism as well, and probably many other religions. So to me, it's always interesting with concepts when you think about how they're not necessarily culture specific or like religion specific, in that in many places they found a benefit of just taking time to sit still, or to pray or to think or whatever it is, like
Yeah.
focus your thoughts on something. So I think it is a lot of times ignorance, and it's just something that, you know, you can continue to educate about.
And scientifically, when you talk about the practice of meditation, of being still and breathing and like just working through your own thoughts, like there are so many scientific benefits, like religion aside, like everything else, yoga aside, there are scientific benefits in helping kids. Like I've read an article recently about Baltimore, I think, and in DC, and there was one other city where they've put that in place of discipline, like other types of discipline, in more of like a restorative justice type way. And the kids have been more engaged. They've been more confident. They've been more comfortable having less outbreaks with the teachers and things like that. Like just giving kids a space to be one with their thoughts and to actually like turn inwards. Like they might have a lot going on at home and never been introduced to the concept of just sitting still and figuring out how you feel.
Have you ever taught meditation to children?
I have.
And how was it? Because I wonder, you know, with them having so much energy or, you know, the space to sit still, how does that work with them? And like, would you feel like you would incorporate that into raising kids of your own if you have kids?
Definitely want to have kids, and I definitely will. What I'll say is I like teaching dynamic mindfulness, so moving meditation with kids. So walking them through exercises while they're essentially meditating, because kids have a lot of energy. But another thing that would surprise people is kids, and I've primarily worked with late elementary school and middle school. They are so good and they're so curious about it. It's actually harder for high schoolers to do it. Like as people get older, I think there's
because now you're too cool for it.
Yeah,
or whatever.
exactly. And you're self-conscious. Like I worked with a group of high school girls this past summer, and some of them would open their eyes and like look and see if other people were doing it. And if other girls were, they were cool with it, but some were too cool. But middle school kids, they're about that life. Like they want to try, they will sit still and breathe. But I think the best way is to get them to move first and then to sit still and breathe.
That's interesting. In your life, so you said you started with yoga meditation like 8 years ago, or did you say 2 years ago?
Well, meditation like to yoga.
Okay. So in the last couple of years, how would you say your life overall feels different before introducing meditation and after meditation?
I feel like I know myself better by sitting still with my thoughts. Like I would be really indecisive and go back and forth about things and ask a lot of people advice for situations, when now before I ask anybody for advice, I sit still with myself and I like form, okay, well, this is really how I'm feeling and I understand myself. Like, and then I have those conversations. So it's helped me be more confident in who I am and making decisions or realizing why I feel a certain way about something, and then having those difficult conversations with people or with jobs. So it's helped me be a better decision maker and also helped me live a more authentic life for myself, myself.
That's good. I would say the difference in life overall before and after meditation for me is that I feel more in control of myself. So I don't, you know, before if my thoughts just go off the rails, they're just always off the rails. I don't know anything different. I don't really know peace or what peace feels like. And so to take time, I'm almost more so getting in the habit of recognizing my own control of myself, because with me, even if, like I said, I don't always have to be stressed out or whatever to meditate, but if it's part of my daily practice to meditate, take time to be still, it's just reminding me that I can do this at any time just to like refresh, reboot, refocus. And it's practicing paying attention to myself, which I then carry out throughout the day. So the more I am paying attention to the present, the more I am making better decisions. I feel better about what's going on. I'm not as overwhelmed.
Yeah.
And so when I do feel that way, now I know what it feels like to kind of be more chill. And so I very quickly can process that. Let me take a minute and do whatever. It may not always be meditation, but let me take a minute and I recognize that this feels crazy and I want to do something different. And so I'm not stuck in anything. I can change how I feel. I can feel better if I want to feel better. If I don't, then I can decide to like do anything else or chill or soak or whatever. But I know it's like I'm taking responsibility of my mind, I guess.
No, I love that. And it introduced me to a peace that is only accessible within myself when I take the time to access it. Whenever I take the time to be still or to listen to myself and to check in with my body. I just love the way that I feel after.
And so do you do it at the like same time every day, or do you do it when you feel a certain way?
Ideally, in a perfect world, Carlie would do it every morning at the same time, but because there's not, I do it every day, but it's at different times. I try to do it first thing because if I check in with myself first thing in the day, like you said, then that throughout the rest of the day, I'm just more connected with myself, able to act from a place of calmness and control because I've already talked to myself. But if not, I do it whenever I can. It might also happen more than once a day if I feel really stressed or if I feel like there's a lot going on or if I feel myself start to get anxious or crazy.
But does it feel like something's missing or like you started your day off if you don't do it?
It does. It does. But I think that's any part of my routine. Like some days meditating looks like sitting still with my app and doing a guided meditation. Some days I do yoga in the mornings, like for, 10 minutes and then sit still and do it. And then some days it's in my car. But I prefer to do it in the morning because I feel like it gives me a better foundation.
Okay.
What about you? What does your practice look like?
What does my practice look like? For me, I meditate in the mornings, depending on if I have time before certain things get started, like meetings and work stuff. But I'll usually listen to a 10-minute guided meditation that's like the meditation of the day on Calm, or they have a few that I'll go to specifically sometimes. But if I don't do it in the morning, I don't feel, that's not the part that makes me feel like my day is off necessarily, because if I didn't do it, well, only if I like rushed, like if I'm like, shoot, just left the gym and I got to start doing something, whatever, then I'm kind of off just because I'm rushing too much and I should have got up earlier anyway, just to let myself have some me time. So I think having me time is important for my mornings, but that doesn't necessarily mean meditation in that way. But a lot of times I'll do it in the evening too. And I like to clear and like recenter before I go to bed. So I like listening to them sometimes at nighttime too. But at first I was more focused on having a routine, and now I just pull it up when I want to pull it up. So it's kind of fake part of my morning, but sometimes I'll skip it or sometimes I just read or whatever. And other than that, like I'll do it throughout the day whenever I feel like it.
So do you see any difference before you do it and after?
Yeah, I think the immediate difference I feel right before and after I meditate is that I just feel a little bit more at ease, and I'm being more present makes me feel like I'm fine. And I think overall in my practice, the more I meditate and the more I learn about self-awareness and apply all of those things, it's also the less I care about stuff that doesn't really matter. So I care less about outside things, environmental things. I care less maybe about the fact that I might have had like $2, like I don't care about things anymore because I'm kind of more focused on what's good, what's right, what's going on. And I can be more effective when I'm in that mindset. But also for me, my practice is not easy because there's times where I'll do meditation and in the middle of it, I'm like, yo, this isn't it right now. Like I'm not feeling it and I'll cut it off, or like I'm not focusing on forcing it and it's just not there. So I might cut it off. There's times I've done the whole thing and I'm like, yeah, I didn't hear anything they said. Like I didn't really do it because whatever is going on in my mind is that heavy. And there's times when I will try to do it and I'm like losing the battle of thinking about something. And I know I'm losing. Like, I'm like, damn, I'm not supposed to think about that. So the things too, like we always say, like you really have to be forgiving with it as well. Even if you're super experienced, I'm sure probably sometimes it's just hard to think. And for me, the moment I close my eyes, it's like everything else starts lighting up. So sometimes it's easier if I do the like look at one point in the wall, because even with my eyes open, I don't start imagining things or talking to myself as much, like, within my mind. But it's definitely not always easy. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, as far as immediately making me feel any different. Breathing ones, I've actually found they're always like effective and at least like chilling me out. But not always just listening to it. Body scans that's the ones where they'll say, just feel your scalp, feel your cheeks, your neck. And like you kind of go through and just recognize how different pieces of your body feel as you go through it. And it helps you to be self-aware, but sometimes I can't focus on all that either. But I think it's very interesting that when they're like, hey, what do you feel in your arm? Like all of a sudden you're like, dang, it is a little, sore. This part's tickling or whatever. Like you're more aware of like what's going on, like for real, right then. And it's almost like you can breathe and direct the energy to that spot or to that place. Whether it's just in your mind or it's really happening, I don't know, but it feels better. So it's also interesting. Like I say all of that just to be like, Carlie said it's different for everybody. And for you, I think you try different styles, different amounts of time, when you do it, how you do it, all of that stuff, and just see what might work for you.
Yeah, and you can do sitting. Drishti is a soft stare when you're not staring intently at something, but when kind of it gets a little bit fuzzy. One of my favorite ones that I can't always, it's so interesting because different times, different things work for me. And I love the ones where they talk about picturing light, like either coming from the sky, but going down and warming your whole body. Like it's cool when I feel the tinglies like all the way through my body. I love that, but that's not always accessible. And I definitely have those days where I'm like, man, screw this app. And I I don't want to hear you today. I use Headspace. She uses Calm. Calm is a woman's voice. Headspace is a man's voice. He has a British accent. And you just have to find what works for you. There are a ton of videos on YouTube. I would say to try those. Maybe look up some dynamic mindfulness. So if you're like me and you feel like got to be all over the place sometimes, like maybe a moving meditation is the best introduction for you. But just kind of challenge you to do what works for you. I used to be self-conscious about meditating in public in safe areas. Well, what I would think to be more safe. Like when I was at USC, like in between classes, sometimes I would go sit outside on a park bench in the sun and just kind of meditate for a few minutes to recenter and check in with myself. But now sometimes I'll do like 2 or 3 minute meditations in my car if I feel like I need to like exhale before I go teach, or if I feel my thoughts start to get crazy.
Yeah, when you think about it, there may be something in your routine or that you automatically kind of do when you know you're stressed, and maybe that is something to look into, like, oh, is that kind of a form of meditation? Or, from that, what's something similar to that, in the meditation world, so that you can really kind of attach even more to that thing. Because there's stuff that we already do. I think when we feel stressed, for example, going down that lane, what do you usually do? Maybe you pick up a cigarette. Maybe you are like, man, I want to go drink, or maybe you want to read, or maybe you just want to go lay down. And I think being familiar with meditation just gives you another alternative to running to something that or that's comforting but may not be as healthy or as good for you. And so meditation at least is like, man, let me wind down, and now I'm gonna still get my glass of wine, but it might just be one instead of like just take the cork off the bottle. But yeah, it's like, think about what you already kind of do and try new things and go deeper into that. Maybe like the counting backwards or whatever that you've been taught as a kid is something that you can incorporate into an even longer, and then challenging yourself, can I do this for 10 minutes? Can I do this for 15 minutes? Can I do this for 30 minutes? I know Deepak Chopra, he talks about like doing it for 30 minutes, and that sounds like it's nothing, especially if you've never tried it before. But like, I'm telling you, when this podcast is over, unless you're at work, or if you're at work, go to the bathroom, clock out real quick, but try to do this whole for like 5 minutes. You can be like, damn, this is hard. But 30 minutes, an hour. I was talking to my friend Earl, shout out Nan Earl, other day, and was like, have you ever had a day of complete silence? Like you intentionally did not talk. And by that, I don't even mean just not talk to people, not engage in conversation, not read, not text, not tweet, not engage, like mentally conversation, or like with your mouth having conversation. She's like, nah, I never did that. And I'd seen that somewhere. I don't remember if it was Deepak or somebody talking about, every once in a while just doing that. Like literally, could you take a day? And I feel like I know I would go crazy. But even like 30 minutes is wild to me. Bruh. So there's different levels for sure. But, one day I would want to do, a full day of, not necessarily I'm just sitting in the corner meditating, but just super, super, super focused on being aware, like not talking. Then maybe for a weekend one time or whatever. Yeah, but it's just very interesting to me.
And I was about to say, I mean, this thing has super levels. So if you are just starting out with meditation, I say download Calm or download Headspace and try that. But if you're like, I don't know about that, how about you just put your phone in your pocket when you're walking somewhere and just start to look around and actually see what's around you. Like look up, like look around. Like we get so caught up in being connected all the time. So just take a moment to be present. But if you're like, meditation, that's easy. But, being silent, I think it's so interesting. You say that there's a 10-day retreat called Vipassana. And it's a thing. And actually, I've actually had a couple friends that did it. It's 10 days of no talking. and meditating. It's like disconnecting from everything.
Wild.
It's wild. And I had a friend who went twice, and both times she was like, I couldn't do both. I couldn't do it. She had to leave like after 5 or 6 days. She was like, it was just too much. And then when you really think about it, first it's like, okay, well, why would I do that? But second, like, could I do that? Like, is that something I want to do? And so just testing those boundaries, and imagine like if you're not talking to anybody, if you're not looking at Twitter or Instagram or Facebook, what comes up?
Yeah, I heard that it just unlocks things in your mind. It was Deepak when he was talking about, all right, after 30 minutes, you feel a certain way. After a few hours, you're going to feel a certain way. Like, you go crazy. And then it probably gets to a point where, which I don't know if I'll ever know, but it gets to a point where it's just like, it's just you, and your brain stops trying so hard to like make all this stuff happen in its mind and talk to you or whatever is going on. But I think the longer you do it, you just like unlock. So that's interesting.
And also Deepak and Oprah have a 21-day free meditation challenge coming up. I think it's in like on the 21st or the 25th. So look up just Deepak, Deepak, and Oprah. It's a free one coming up. So if you want to try it with guided, they have a little thing you can read every day. It's a good way to introduce yourself to meditation.
Yeah, that's good. And I would say as we close out, like my shout out, I guess, would be to the apps we use. Headspace. For me, I use Calm. I still have a few more guest passes if anybody wants to download the full Calm app. If you do the free regular one, it gives you access to a couple, but with mine, I think it's like a free 30 days of the full thing. So I can send that to you if you DM me your email address. Whoa. Or
she's trying to pop up on you.
Yeah, your email address. I'll send it to you.
I also have some Headspace passes. I think I have 2. So if you want to try Headspace or Calm, hit me and Lex up, screenshot, let us know you're listening. We want to know. Go ahead.
And I also with Calm wanted to bring up too that they have another app, because I remember I talked about Calm Harm. For if you have trouble with harming yourself, you go in the app and they have all these different like games and things you can do. But they just have started another one that I downloaded the other day. It's called it's called Clear Fear Clear, or something like that. But it's like it's for anxiety. So you go into it when you're feeling anxious, and they have different types of things you can do to like get your mind back into the present. So it's kind of different from the regular like Calm app, which is straight up meditations. But this one has kind of like more mindfulness type things to do in games and stuff too.
Oh, that's really cool. I didn't know. I got to check that out. If y'all have listened to different apps or you have other ways to meditate, screenshot #Carlie's Couch. Let us know what you do or what your journey's been like. Or if you have any questions, like I'm down to answer some.
She's looking at me waiting for me to say I'm down to answer some, but
you know, Carlie is.
No, I don't know. You can ask me whatever, but I'll let you know if I don't know. So
yeah,
Google is your friend. That's what I'm going to say.
I'll say I'm a teacher. That does not mean that I have answers. So she's asking me, is it? I have no idea. And I think that's also a beautiful thing, is there's not just this is what it is. Because we're all so different. Our minds, our experiences, the way we process. And so really finding what works for you. And that might change.
So also we have question of the week. And this week, Carlie, I guess you could get to answer first since I'm asking it, is am I showing or am I telling?
I am showing. I've really just been working behind the scenes on a lot of things and letting my work show for what it is. I haven't really been talking about a lot of big plans and things that I'm doing or changes that I'm trying to make. I've just been working.
But you know what? I feel like you never really have. I don't feel like you talk that much about the stuff that you're doing. Almost to where I think you should do more.
Oh, good to know.
Not trying to turn this on you like, no. But now when you said that, I thought about like, yeah, you're not one of those like, oh, working on this, doing that.
Oh yeah, I finished
so,
my
like,
website.
You don't really work on.
And I told her, and she was like, "Did you post about it?"
Right.
And I was
or
like,
not that you have
no.
to, but at the same time, I'm like, yeah, I don't really see you talking about your work or your things as much. So.
Good to know. What about you?
I think it's balance. Maybe I think I go through periods where I don't really want to talk about stuff as much, but even to certain people or to myself, like sometimes I do find myself even telling myself, like honestly, it might be to myself the most, that I'm telling myself all these things like, oh, I'm doing this, I'm working on this, but like I'm not always working on it, or I'm not doing those things. Like they remain ideas for a long time sometimes, or it's like in a middle phase. And it's part of like always having so many things to juggle at the same time. You know, I have to recognize what stuff do I take time to work on and to do. And even with that, it's just like finishing it, getting it done. But I have less desire to be like, oh, this is happening. We're doing this, we're doing that. Because I do recognize, I guess, that it's more important to just show the final thing, and show what's going on. But I understand the game as well. Sometimes I'll see other people and they're talking about stuff and I'm like, you know, when you know people and you're like,
Yeah.
but at the same time, I understand like sometimes you talk about things in a way to get more like buzz or leverage, and then you can get it done. So, you know, at the same time, focus on me, what I'm doing. Same with you. Like, I'm not about to call you like, dang, you ain't posted nothing. So it's important to not tell if there's nothing to show, but I think it's important to do both if they're happening together.
Yeah, I think it is. I think it's also a way to hold yourself accountable. And so maybe that's just me telling her like, hey, I'm working on this thing to hold myself accountable, as opposed to like, hey, guess what I'm doing, which is okay too. Like, if you want to share, like, I love people sharing projects and things, and also sharing some behind the scenes. Like, well, I'm really working towards this, but here's where I am right now. Like, that's cool too. So for you guys, where are you? Are you showing? Are you telling? Are you both? And then how do you balance that?
Yep. So thanks for listening to this week's episode on meditation. We hope you try something different today, this week. See how you like it. See what you learn about it. If you already practice, like Carlie said, let us know what you do. And that's all I got.
Yeah, I want to know if it is your first time trying it, or you haven't in a long time. I want to know like if you feel different or what came up. Like, screenshot, let us know you're listening. And don't forget to sign up for the newsletter, carliescouch.com. We send one every Monday, and it always has good content. So hope y'all have a wonderful week.
Namaste.